Pippi plays tag with policemen. Everyone in the town soon knew that the little girl, just 9 years old, was living alone in Villa Kula Cottage. Mothers and fathers shook their heads and agreed that this would not do at all. Certainly all children had to have someone to tell them what they ought to do, and all the children ought to go to school to learn the multiplication tables. And so they decided the little girl in Villa Kula Cottage should be put into a children's home at once. One beautiful afternoon, Pippi had invited Tommy and Nika to her house for tea and ginger snaps. She set the tea things on the step of the front porch. It was sunny and pretty there, and the flowers in Pippi's garden smelt sweetly. Mr. Nelson climbed up and down the porch railing, and now and again the horse would stick his nose forward, expecting to be offered a ginger snap. "How lovely it is to be alive," said Pippi, stretching her legs out as far as they would go. Just then 2 policemen in full uniform came through the gate. "Oh," said Pippi, "this must be my lucky day too. Policemen are the very best thing I know, except for strawberries and cream." She went forward to meet the policeman, her face shining with delight. "Are you the girl who moved into Villa Kula Cottage?" said one of the policemen. "Not me," said Pippi. "I'm a very small aunt who lives on the 3rd floor at the other end of town." She only said this because she wanted to have a bit of fun with the policeman. She didn't think it was the least bit funny. They told her not to try and be so clever, and then they explained that kind of people in town had arranged for her to be placed in a children's home. "I'm already in a children's home," said Pippi. "What's that? It's already arranged?" asked the policeman. "Which children's home is that?" "This one," said Pippi. "I'm a child and this is my home. There aren't any grown-ups living here, so I think that makes it a children's home." "Dear child," said the policeman, laughing. "You don't understand. You must come to a regular institution where people can look after you." "Are horses allowed in this situation?" wondered Pippi. "No, of course not," said the policeman. "That's that, I suppose. I thought as much," said Pippi gloomily. "Well, how about monkeys then?" "Certainly not. I should think you'd know that." "I see," said Pippi. "Then you'll just have to find yourself kids for that situation of yours, somewhere else, 'cause I don't mean to move there." "Yes, but don't you see you have to go to school?" said the policeman. "Why do I?" "Well, to learn things, of course." "What kind of things?" Pippi asked. "Any number of different kinds," said the policeman. "A whole lot of useful things. Multiplication tables, for example." "I managed well enough without any multiplication tables for 9 years," said Pippi. "So I suppose I can keep managing." "Come on now, imagine how unpleasant it will be to be so ignorant. Just think when you grow up and someone comes and asks you what the capital of Portugal is. You can't answer." "Oh yes, I could. I'd say if you're all that anxious to know what the capital of Portugal is, by all means write direct to Portugal and ask them." "Yes, but don't you think you'd be sorry you didn't know it yourself?" "Might be so. I suppose I would lie awake at times at night and wonder what the dickens was the name of the capital of Portugal. But then you can't have fun all the time," said Pippi, turning a few cartwheels. "Anyway, I've been to Lisbon with my father," she continued, while upside down and then right side up, so she could talk that way too. But then one of the policemen said that Pippi shouldn't believe that she should do exactly as she pleased. She would just come along to the children's home, and that at once. He went towards her and took hold of her arm, but Pippi quickly slipped loose and hit him lightly and said, "Tag!" And before he could blink his eyes, she had taken a leap up to the post of the porch with a few pulls. She was up on the balcony over the porch. The policemen didn't feel inclined to climb after her the same way, so they rushed into the house and up the first floor. But when they came out on the balcony, Pippi was already halfway to the roof. She climbed on the roof tiles very much as if she herself were a monkey. In a moment she stood up to the top of the roof and jumped easily up onto the chimney. Down on the balcony, both the policemen stood tearing at their hair, and on the lawn below stood Tommy and Nika looking up at Pippi. "What fun it is to play tag," shouted Pippi, "and how nice it was of you to come. My lucky day today, too. They're plain to see you." When the policemen had thought a moment, they went and got a ladder, which they leaned against the roof, and then they climbed up, first one and then the other, to fetch Pippi down. But they looked a little bit afraid when they climbed up onto the roof, and began balancing their way towards Pippi. "Don't be scared," cried Pippi. "It's not dangerous, just fun." When the policeman came 2 steps of Pippi, she leaped quickly down from the chimney and, laughing and whooping, and ran along the top of the roof to the other gable. A few yards from the house stood a tree. "Watch me dive!" shouted Pippi, and then she hopped straight down into the tree's green crown, hung fast in a branch, dangled back and forth a moment, and let herself fall to the ground, and then she dashed off on the other gable and took away the ladder. The policemen had looked a bit foolish when Pippi jumped, but they looked even more so when they balanced their way back along the top of the roof and wanted to climb down the ladder. At first they became dreadfully angry and yelled at Pippi, who stood below looking up at them, that she better put the ladder back or else they'd show her a thing or two. "Why are you so angry?" said Pippi reproachably. "We're only playing tag, so we all ought to be friends." The policeman thought for a moment. At last one of them had said in a small voice, I said, wouldn't you be nice and bring the ladder back so that we can get down?" "Certainly I will," said Pippi, and brought the ladder back at once. "And then we can have tea and have a nice time together." But the policemen were very deceitful, to be sure, for as soon as they got on the ground they rushed upon Pippi and shouted, "Now you're going to get it, you nasty child!" But then Pippi said, "No, now I haven't had time to play any longer, though it is fun, I must admit." Then she took a strong hold of their belts and carried them along the orchard and out through the gate to the road. There she set them down, and it was a long time before she could bring themselves to move. "Wait a minute," shouted Pippi, and ran into the kitchen. She came out with 2 heart-shaped ginger snaps. "Would you like to try one?" she said. "I don't suppose it make much difference, they're a little burnt." Then she went back to Tommy and Nika, who stood there staring and filled with wonder, and the policeman hurried back to town and said it was all the good mothers and fathers there, and that Pippi just wasn't suitable for a children's home. They didn't talk about having been up on the roof. Everyone agreed perhaps it was best to let Pippi stay in Villa Cooler Cottage, and if it should happen that she wanted to go to school, that she could arrange that herself. But Pippi and Tommy and Nika had a really pleasant afternoon. They continued the interrupted tea party. Pippi gobbled down 14 ginger snaps and said, "Those weren't what I'd call the best kind of policeman, no. Altogether too much silly talk for children's home and purification in Lisbon."